welcome back. So one of the big questions that many people have when going to chemotherapy is what to pack with them, because you're going to be at chemotherapy for a while. My first chemotherapy session I've had, I'm fixing to lose my hair here probably next week. Between Monday I go back, the following Monday when I go back for chemo. And so one of the neat things is that when I showed up at my very first chemo, a church group had donated a bunch of chemo bags, and these were filled with, it turns out, very useful things, many of which I actually used on that very first day. For example, I didn't bring a little blanket because I thought, well, they would have them there, and sure enough they did. But rather than tell them after my Herceptin injection that I was kind of, experiencing chills, I pulled out my little blanket that was in my bag and I put it on me, and then they came over and said, "Would you like a heated blanket?" I said, "Yes, please." And so what I thought I would share with you now are some things that I would pack now, knowing more, into a chemotherapy bag. And the first thing is, this is absolutely wonderful. This is a really heavy-duty canvas bag, and I would recommend a bag like this, except that I'm a nerd. And so my chemotherapy bag is, of course, your standard backpack. And a few things that I've put into this bag so far, of course, critical things you're going to need. And so first of all, that blanket that I talked about. You don't need some big giant blanket, a nice, handy blanket. And so, for example, I have here a wonderful blanket that you could put into your chemotherapy bag and take with you. Now, a few other things that you might want to take, a pair of scissors. Scissors are incredibly useful, and so make sure that you have scissors. In particularly, if you're ever attacked by a nurse or another patient, you can use the scissors to defend yourself. You should always carry along a stuffed animal, because these guys here can keep you busy. You can talk to them just in case the person in the chair next to you is not particularly talkative. You can carry on your own conversation. Along those same lines, I recommend also bringing a cat. Even whether the cat cares about it or not, I recommend bringing a cat. Whether or not people are allergic to the cat, that's a different story. But yes, bringing a cat, I would recommend that. I also recommend a pillow. Pillows are incredibly useful. Not only, so you can take the nap after they give you the Benadryl or the equivalent to a Benadryl, and you want to take yourself a nap, but when you wake up, that's the best time for a pillow fight. You, of course, will want to have something to drink. They do provide beverages for the most part at the chemo facility, but having your own beverage is always recommended. I recommend your standard rubber band pistol, because when you wake up from that nap that you've had, you might tire of the pillow fight, in which case a good rubber band fight will keep things lively throughout the rest of the day. Along those same lines, a bit of weights, and so this is a simple weight that you can strap onto your wrist or your ankle, and this will prove to everybody else in the chemo facility that you indeed are, keeping up with your exercises and your workouts, and you're going to rock this thing and win. I highly recommend bringing along your own DVD copies of The Good Neighbors, or, at the time, this is a wonderful 1970s British comedy. So it's also called The Good Life over there, but marketed to the people in the US, it was called Good Neighbors. Another thing that I highly recommend is your standard strainer. You might think, well, why do I have to bring a strainer? It's not like I'm going to be making any spaghetti. But the thing is that in the rubber band fight or the pillow fight that you're going to have, it can be helpful to, wear some head protection, especially because you're going to be losing your hair. And so, highly recommended one standard strainer. So imagine that the pillow fight and the rubber band gun fight have escalated to the point where you really need to defend yourself. You've whipped out your scissors, but people are still coming at you, and you need a little bit more firepower. I recommend a cannon. The cannon here, this is loaded standard 44 caliber round. It is a black powder cannon, and so you do have to shove your powder down into the cannon before you ram that bullet down there, and then a small little bit of powder here in the touch hole and a flame, and you have cleared the room. And so I highly recommend that you bring yourself your own homemade black powder cannon. If you still have the cat, I recommend bringing the cat toy, because the cat has long tired of the whole situation, and so pretty much it wants to hide in the corner with its little toy while you're out trying to kill people with your cannon. Some people might consider this too much, but as a nerd, I think that you should always bring a couple of Lego sets along. Not only because you will get hours of enjoyment of taking it apart and putting it back together, but making those cool little vroom vroom sounds. People will think that you're just a little bit nuts, and they may leave you alone. Now, of course, you do want to maintain the proper healing ambiance during your infusion treatments, and so I recommend some sort of a light source that will set the mood in the room, particularly if it's very nerdy. Again, some people might consider this a little over the top, but this is about you battling cancer in the best way that you know how. As a nerd, I highly recommend your standard Texas Instruments calculator. Some people might say that, other brands are perfectly fine, but even though Texas Instruments are overpriced, they can't beat anything else that's out there, especially Casio's. Casio, if you're listening, whatever you're doing with your calculators, stop it. And make it more like what the TI is, so that the instructor for, say, an astronomy course doesn't have to fight with the calculators of whatever the students have brought in. Make them all like the TI. Casio, if you're listening, I implore you to make them more like the TIs. So not last on my list, but something very important is, of course, your computer. Some people would prefer to bring a small phone or an iPad. But if you really, really hate laptop computers, you're going to need a big laptop computer. So this baby here is what I recommend. Anything smaller is just, you can't type on something that small. And so here you go, you can do some data processing while you're getting your chemo infusion. And finally, I would like to recommend that you bring along a printer. It doesn't have to be a big printer, but a printer will help you, especially if you're doing some data processing, some imaging. You may need to print out what you're looking at, because the dynamics of your screen are going to be different than the dynamics of what's printed out on a piece of paper. And so a small portable printer is highly recommended. Now, once you have packed your chemo bag and you've got everything exactly the way you need it, and it will, I have checked, all fit inside of your standard school backpack, then you'll be completely all set for your next chemo infusion.